So essentially, it will be a conversational piece about the first 10 years of GRAD, and each of these persons will give their unique perspective on what their work contribution to GRAD has been, and just their own reflection on the work that GRAD has done over these 10 years. Because I'm the maybe most recent arrivant to the panel, they've asked me to moderate the panel. Essentially, what I want each person to do in no particular order, but I'll start right here with Dr. Isatu. Not sure why she's dodging. Essentially, what I want each person to do is simply to introduce themselves, their role on the GRAD team, and just a short reflective piece on what GRAD has meant for them personally over these last 10 years. We'll take that first round, and then I'll have a few more questions, and persons can feel free to answer, right? The mics are already on. So yeah, so essentially your role in GRAD and your own reflection on GRAD over these 10 years.
All right, Dr. McAlpin. I have to be very obedient and start because I have the person who founded this next to me. So, and I respect my elders. All right. I might actually be the newbie or the new person added to this amazing research team. And yeah, to start with your question, Jermaine, my name is Isatu Ibrahima. I am in the social work department. I'm an associate professor, and I'm also the director of the MSW program here in NAIU. So when Dr. Interhigeza really talked to me about GHRAD, when the conversation about, okay, so we're going to start a center is happening, I was so lucky to be part of that conversation. I remember how we even came up with the acronym and the name and all that beautiful process. Honestly, just a reflective piece for the past, I've been here for 8 years. And I think I've been part of GRAD since the center started. This is my 3rd or 4th conference, because we did 2 over the Zoom, right? Yeah, this is my 4th conference. And all it has been through and through is a whole lot of learning and development, personally and academically for me, because I've never thought that I would study genocide. Never, it has never occurred to me, because I'm a social worker. I'm all about uplifting people. Or that's probably the cliche that we all assume. However, what this center, my affiliation with the center, and what we've been doing so far in the center taught me is that there is a lot of beauty in the midst of the murky lines, right? Even in death, even in destruction, people survive. So I've always been interested in that story of survival and the resilience. And I studied trauma because in social work, we talk a lot about trauma-informed programs. And I've known how it shifts and alters almost everything we experience and how we see, how we carry ourselves and interact with the whole cosmos. So I was very much interested to understand the trauma and genocide and how people still thrive. I mean, survive and thrive. So that story of resilience is my anchoring point among the grim, still acknowledging all the bad things that happened, the ugly things that happened during and post-genocide. So that's been where my interest is, and connecting with this amazing research group. They're phenomenal people. So it's such a journey, and thank you so much for embracing me and sometimes my very silly and not coherent questions. That really helps me grow though. So yeah, so I'll stop there.
Thank
I
you.
can stop.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm Janine Ntihirageza. I'm a faculty member, professor in the TISO, Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages department. But I'm also the director of the Center for Genocide and Human Rights Research in Africa and Diaspora. Yeah, can you, okay. Oh, okay.
Oh, you got two.
Okay, you take this. All right, thank you. Better? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so how did I get to this work? As a survivor of the 1972 genocide in Burundi that killed more than 200,000 people, we, as a child, were told that we could not talk about it. So all my life until 2012, actually, I never talked about it. They said I would be punished if I did. So, but when it happened, I had an opportunity to talk about it. Of course, I was terrified. I started talking about it in Northeastern Illinois University, and I can't thank you all enough. Each of you, those who are here, those who are not here, Northeastern embraced me as a broken human being and just walked me through step by step. Until today, I can't thank my colleagues enough, my friends and colleagues, and I could talk about it all day. So then again, I have to say it's been a privilege to be able to ask questions, to be given a chance to ask questions like why, what happened, why were we silenced? Deep silence for 50 years. At that time, it was 40 years, but now it's 50 years. And people couldn't talk about it. Inside the country, no. Even when we were outside, it's almost like there was somebody who was going to know that we talked about it, who would punish us. So I asked questions, and I have more questions to answer still, but I've had a chance to get answers as I did some research, as I kept going. And so I was lucky to have mentors like René Marchand, who's an expert in the field. I've been able to connect with the colleagues here. The first one I connected with, it was Chi Eze, who is a colleague, has since moved to Carleton University and is on Zoom right now. And he will have, of course, a chance to share his thoughts. There was also Al Frankowski, and everybody else kept joining, but it's been wonderful to have colleagues who were incredibly supportive on the journey. And so as I was thinking, how do I find some of the answers? Maybe from the stories that of those who lived it. A friend of mine once told me that if survivors of Holocaust hadn't told their stories, we wouldn't have the Holocaust studies, the Holocaust centers that we now know of. So I thought, okay, then I hit the road running. So we started collecting testimonies in the diaspora, and now inside Burundi. We've been lucky to have Fararopi Foundation that has funded the 2 trips that we've made to Burundi to collect testimonies. So many people on this panel have traveled with us to Burundi to collect these stories. We have wonderful students who you will hear from tomorrow, who have helped also tell the stories of those who have been silenced. So I will stop here, but my work now is focusing more on memory and memorization to see what we can learn more in that area. Thank you.
So maybe I'm the only person here with a different background coming from the computer science into the genocide center. But after finishing my computer science degree, PhD in computer science, and starting working in South Korea as an assistant professor, I had very strong attachment to the field of social sciences and international relations. So while working as an assistant professor, I started doing my PhD in international relations. I started very optimistic in terms of the applicability of certain theories that embody certain moralities, and then fortunately or unfortunately converged to the realist point of view in the international relations. Going back to my interest in social sciences, I met Janine, and she introduced me to the center, and I thought that I would bring some contributions to this center with some unique, maybe, knowledge and background in the computer science. So now I work within the center on analyzing the sentiment analysis, or performing sentiment analysis of the interviews that the center has conducted with some genocide survivors. And this work will bring some new advancements in the field of artificial intelligence to analyze the sentiments and emotions, to add this kind of, not kind, but this humanitarian aspect of the people who are presenting this work. At first, we will focus on analyzing the text from natural language processing point of view, and I hope in the future we can embody the visual aspects with the emergence of visual transformers. Like we hear a lot about ChatGPT and OpenAI company and their work in the field of using this, what we call the transformers, and which were originally proposed for natural languages. But nowadays we have the emergence and the new things which focusing on images, like visual transformers. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. How are you? My name is Sharon Bethia. I am the coordinator of African American Studies, a professor in counselor education, and a adjunct faculty in inner cities at GHRAD Center. So I've had the pleasure to be around this project for a long time. I don't even know how many years. And part of that is that I was the coordinator of African American Studies, which a large part of this work sat in. And I am proudly one of the co-founding members of the GHRAD Center, in that sitting in those rooms and laughing about the name. And I remember when we were calling it GHRAD, we're like, where's the rest of it? So conversations, listening to Janine and her story. So the luck for me was being in the room, and I just didn't go away, right? And arms were gladly opened for me to be a part of this. When I think about why I do this work, first I want to give a shout out to our students. See 3 of them sitting there. Please stand up. I've had the honor twice, try not to get choked up, because my love for the students at NEIU goes so deep. I've had the honor to travel twice with students from NEIU and watch them embrace this work, very hard work, right? So it's their spirit, their willingness to do the work. Thank God y'all know the technology, right? And as we did this work, as we talk about artificial intelligence, we're looking at African intelligence. That's what this is. That's what this is on the stage. Genocide impacts the world. So I'm a mental health professional. So part of my reasoning for being in this work is the impact it has, not only on the survivors, the impact it has of African descended and African people throughout the world. That we live in this constant state of trauma. Now, just because for me right now, it's a tagline, is trendy, but the true understanding of trauma around the many atrocities that have happened to African descended people throughout the world. And many we don't talk about. right down to there's been 400 million displaced Africans because of issues like that, of this 400 million, right, over time. And it doesn't make the front page news. The research is not there. And so this project that Dr. Interrogeza chose to take on, in her own healing, in her own scholarship, her own intellect, and found a way to share it with the world has been mind-blowing for me. It has been eye-opening for me. The beauty of the people that you've given me the honor to meet. I feel like Burundi is my home. And so even our echoes of silence, I just remember when I first walked in and saw the pictures on the wall, and thinking about the interviews I had did, the people I had talked to, the beauty in their eyes, what they were saying in their eyes. How wouldn't I be honored to do this work? How wouldn't I? It's amazing. I don't even know if I have words to describe just how unbelievable it is to meet people all around the world that not only survive and thrive, and then honored us with telling their stories about what happened, right? Just sitting in their healing, because like Janine said, for 50 years, they couldn't say anything. So we're actually sitting in the midst of them beginning to heal. And what an honor it was to sit there and do that. What an honor it was to be with students, to see it through their eyes. It's one thing to see it, we're researchers and we do this work, but to see it through our students' eyes and how they engaged with the humanity of it all and fell in love with it. So I'd like to thank my students for being a part of this, right? And going on this journey with us, and being our workers and our warriors in this work. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nadège Velboachter, and I am an associate professor of Francophone Studies at Purdue University. And I met Janine in 2019 and Jermaine also at a conference in Cambodia on genocide. And I was working, starting at the time, working on a project that looks at genocide, but from a Caribbean perspective, the Holocaust in particular. So I look at the Haiti as a place of refuge for Jewish exiles from Europe. And the convergence of extreme violence between the Jewish communities and the Black communities, looking at the 1937 massacre of Haitians on the border with the Dominican Republic. And I also take my study back to Europe by looking at the cases of Caribbean civilians who were part of the French resistance, and when caught by the German authorities were sent to concentration camps. So I look at also the convergence of Black and Jewish communities in those concentration spaces. So the descendants of slave societies and Jewish people in those realms, how do those histories, converge and create new realms of memory. So after meeting Janine, we discovered that we had common interests and started working together. And she invited me to be part of the center. And I also took part in the first trip to Burundi in December 2022. And I was amazed by the beauty of the people, of her family first, and then the people that we met, their resilience, their grace, their dignity, when they were telling the atrocities that they had lived through. So this has allowed me to come back with ways to look at my own research and broaden the questions that I ask. So after 50 years of silence about this genocide, I looked at the Haitian case and started to question the way that we go about designing our own research agendas and methodologies that we use to look at history. What do we learn? How do we learn it? What becomes part of the canon? What is left out and why? So this has allowed me to look at my own research in a more transversal, transnational, and trans-ethnic manner. And this is also allowing me to, so in addition to the book, I'm working on a website companion, a digital project website companion for the book. And this knowledge will also be useful to work on another project with Janine, which is to put the stories that we have collected in 2022 into a format that will make them more widely accessible to a larger audience of learners and researchers. So I'm trying to think of ways to create stories that will help those new pool of this new pool of audience to question these silence past and for them to become more fruitful topics of discussion among researchers and learners as well. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Isidore Uda. I'm an associate professor here in health sciences. So I was born in Nigeria many years ago. And when I was a little boy during the Nigerian Civil War, I remember my village was one of the centers of the war. I remember corpses strewn around everywhere. As far as your eyes could see, there were hundreds of soldiers who were killed in my village alone, and the houses that were destroyed, and then the women who were forcefully taken from their husbands and assaulted by the soldiers. So I still remember those things even till today. So when I was old enough to start researching on these things, which is actually when I came to the United States many years ago. So I was naturally drawn to the subject of conflict and how that affects communities, and then how that affects human development among different sections of the community, among the genders in different societies. So for the past several years, I've looked at the impact of that Nigerian Civil War on coexistence in Nigeria currently, and then on the different subsequent problems and conflicts that we have had in that country. So I started with looking at the impact of conflict on the transmission of communicable diseases, focusing on HIV and AIDS, because where I was born in Nigeria, which is called the Niger Delta of Nigeria, there is a tremendous amount of petroleum, which is being pumped out, millions of barrels pumped out every day. And then in that part of Nigeria, the oil workers work collaboratively with the Nigerian government soldiers they can literally come to your compound, and they say, "We found oil in your under your house. Therefore, we are giving you 2 days or 1 day to pack out of your house. And then they just take your house, take your land without any compensation. And then they drive a lot of people out of their property without any compensation. And those who resist are either they are made to disappear, or they are put through very tremendous suffering. So I started researching the impact of all of these types of things on public health, the public health of the people who live in those in that part of Nigeria. And then when I came to NEIU, I met Janine, and then she is very persuasive and very persistent. So she persuaded me to, join this center, and then to bring my research, and then to bring whatever I have to help strengthen what she was building here. So my role has been to advise, and then to try to find sources of support. We did try to, we submitted a grant proposal, and then we are also looking at those types of activities that we can do to bring resources into the center. And then, as you may have known, within the last 10 years alone, in Nigeria, almost 50,000 people have been killed, not only by the oil-related conflicts, but also many of you have heard of Boko Haram, and then and other conflicts that relates to climate change, agriculture, and then people who are called cattle herdsmen, who are storming communities there and seizing their land to provide pasture for their cattle. So when I hear about what happened in Burundi and Rwanda, I see similarities between what happened in East Africa with what happened in Nigeria during the Civil War, where about 1 million people were killed in my part of the country alone. And then what is happening today continues to happen today in different parts of Nigeria and other countries around Nigeria. Thank you.
It's hard to go after this amazing group of people. So I'm Chris Tuffalo. I'm a tenured professor here in the Justice Studies Department, currently directing the Office of International Programs. And I think if we think back to the pandemic, somebody's wearing a mask here, so it's hard to forget the pandemic. I think the lesson we learned was we really need other people. And anytime one person is engaging with another person, it's a moral relationship, right? You're either treating each other well or you're not. And I believe that when you go through life, whether you intend to or not, sometimes you take on moral obligations you don't even know that you're doing. And sitting next here to Isidore, the reason I'm sitting on this panel is during the first genocide conference here, there was a talk about Nigeria and about the Civil War and about the genocide when starvation was used as a method against the Igbo people. And it reminded me of something that I incurred as a young woman visiting that part of Nigeria, and I incurred a debt that I didn't even know that I'd had. All of a sudden, children that I had seen, not really understanding what I was seeing, came flooding back to my head. And so I had to join this group because of seeing them. And what my remarks today are going to be because I incurred another debt. I'm at NEIU due to a long, complicated story that involved Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And that relationship and the moral voice that he was, and I think continues to be even after his passing, about apartheid and about inhumanity. And he was also a very vocal spokesman about any country that uses apartheid or other methods against a segment of the population. And I'm reminded of that today. We're going to be talking about a lot of different genocides in Africa, of African people being exterminated and eliminated for state interests. But today I want to just mention in my remarks that Africans aren't only victims. We're not just doing the Conrad Heart of Darkness thing. Africans are agents of change. And I think Janine is no better example of that. Yes, her family was a victim of genocide, but what has she done with that? She's transformed that into work to stop and prevent and to heal from genocide. And likewise, the South African government recently has taken actions to do what all states should be doing right now, is to try and stop a genocide. And I'm referring to it taking Israel to the International Court of Justice, charging that some of the actions that have happened in the last couple of months there amount to genocide. In particular, it asked the court to stop the indiscriminate bombing that's happening there, and to stop the siege. And also it argues that the Genocide Convention's criteria of expressed intent has been met, which is often the hardest thing to do. Now, the International Court of Justice is a court. It's not a criminal court. It's not like the International Criminal Court. It's a court where one state can take another state to court saying you violated international law. And that is what South Africa has done. Just yesterday, it went back to the court and wanted to amend its original statement from December 29th to say that basically starvation is now being used, just like as happened in Nigeria in the 1960s. Now, the court is not, it doesn't have a police force, it can't enforce this, but it's very, very important in cases of genocide to be very conscious of the framing and to be very conscious of the messaging that's getting out. So on the day when the court ruled, what did the United States do? It bombed Yemen. Yemen was another African country that is blockading Israel right now, in part because the Genocide Convention has universal jurisdiction, which means all states should be acting when they see or suspect genocide is happening to prevent that. So the court's ruling, it ruled on, it's a provisional ruling, it's ruled on several things, but said, yeah, we're kind of worried that some of the actions of the Israeli state are genocidal and they should stop. There were 6 things that the court unanimously, I should say that the permanent members of the court unanimously ruled on all 6 items. The only, with one exception, and that was a Ugandan judge. But I think we're in a situation, especially here in the United States, where we are now not acting to stop something that might be genocidal, like the South Africans have taken the lead on, but we're complicit. Just yesterday, Senator Sanders spoke about the $10 billion in military aid that we're contributing to this conflict. So it's with that kind of heavy heart. I think when a regime decides to participate in genocide, there's only 4 ways to stop it. The regime itself can implode because it has internal debates about that. You can have regime change. One government replaces another in a country. A third is that the population inside the country rise up and say, no, not in our name, never again. And the fourth is outside forces need to act. So I think I applaud that South Africa is an agent of change. It's trying to do this work. I think we should all think about ways in which we can contribute to that. So I will stop at that point. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have another member of our team, Professor Che. He's virtual. Go ahead.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me. It's really a tough act to follow, listening to everything that's been said. But I'm so happy to be with you here. So whenever I think of GHRAD, whenever I think of what we've been doing here, what we've been doing since 2012 and 2012 and 2013, I think of two things in particular. Number one is that ideas have wings, and no one knows where they come from, but they can fly to any part of the globe. They only need a kind of enabling environment. Another thing is that ideas are like seeds, so they can grow to big trees. And when I think of seeds, I think of the relationship between acorns and oak. So when Janine came to my office as far back as 11 years ago, and told me of her experience as a genocide survivor. And I think she showed me a few things she had written about her life. She was at that moment gaining the courage to think about her life and to tell about her life. So I don't know why she picked me. So, but she might have heard a few things about my life in Nigeria as a war survivor or whatever. So, but at that moment, so two of us discovered that we have something in common. We have stories to tell. So I suggested that she stick to her story, that or rather that she stick to the courage that is beginning to grow in her, the courage to tell her story. And in encouraging her, I discovered that I was also encouraging myself to tell my story. And then we suggested that we form a kind of small group to, first of all, have a seminar. And we had a seminar, and then from that seminar, we had a symposium. And then from that symposium, we had a conference. So you can see how that small seed has germinated and is growing to this giant tree that it has become. And after a few years of conferences, then we suddenly, discovered that there's the possibility to create a center. And now we have a center. All of this goes to the ingenuity, the courage, and the inspiration of Janine. So we have come a long way. I still remember the very first symposium we held. I think I was the MC. I might have forgotten everything, but there's one thing I couldn't forget, that Janine couldn't actually tell her story because she broke down several times, crying, really. She broke down and, I started asking myself, what's going on? So what really shocked me in a positive sense is how the audience received Janine's tears, how Northeastern Illinois University accepted her and lifted her up. And then she eventually, I think the second symposium, she also cried, but now, I have the feeling, as we all do, that she now has owned her story. And we see the result of everything, that there's now a center and there is going to be an exhibition. So hearing Janine's story, I knew that my story had to be told. And my story is similar to Isidore's. So we come from the same region in Nigeria. But also hearing Janine's story, I knew that, my goodness, my story must be told in perspective. I think it was James Baldwin who said that, where all the while he's been carrying such heavy pain as a descendant of the enslaved people. But then when he began to read other people about other people's experiences, he knew that his own story has to be told in perspective. So what I'm learning from Janine's story, from my own story, from what we have achieved thus far is the power of stories. And the power of stories, I think, as we've heard here, how the stories relate us, connect us to other people. So when we tell our stories, we never know how our stories can be that seed in somebody's lives. That seed that could grow into something we don't know. And we have now basically the moral obligation to tell our stories, but also to listen to other people's stories. And that, for me, is one of the greatest gifts that GHRAD, that associating with all of you, has given me. The courage to know that my story can be an inspiration to other people's stories. So I can only say to all of us, congratulations for having gotten this far, and wish all of us the courage to keep pushing. Thank you.
Thank you. We want to be respectful of time, so we have 5 minutes. And I'm going to be very draconian if you're taking too long to answer. But I just wanted a few persons. Everyone doesn't have to respond because in the interest of time. But I want the panel to share with the audience, those virtually and in person, what's your vision for the future of GHRAD? I'd love to hear some big picture in terms of we've assessed where we are, where we've been, what we are now doing, but what's your vision for the future of GHRAD? And I'm going to put my dear friend on the spot. I didn't get to speak, but I don't have to speak about my context. I met Janine in 2019, July. They mixed up Jermaine and Janine. And so that's how we became friends, July 2019, and we've been collaborating since then. But I want, Janine, I think you should start with that question. What's the future? How do you anticipate the future? What's the vision for GHRAD?
Thank you so much for the question, but I was waiting for you to really tell how you connect. We have such a great story about how you connect with GHRAD, but
In the interest of time, we'll.
Yes, absolutely. So the vision of GHRAD, of course, the vision is determined by our group. I'm so lucky to work with amazing scholars. I mean, you heard their stories. And every decision we make, we move inch by inch, step by step, and really to respond to what's needed. I remember with the Chieze, when we started, it was just looking at those silenced genocides. That was really important to us across the continent and the diaspora. But now, since then, we have 5 pillars that we operate with. The annual conferences, these are established there. We've had now, as you see, we're celebrating our 10th anniversary. Then we have the Digital Oral History Archive that we are officially launching tomorrow. So it's going to be housed at Northeastern. We've had tremendous support from the Dean of Libraries and his team. And of course, the whole university really has been behind supporting us. So we have our stories, our testimonies that we've been collecting are going to be housed there. We have the third pillar is the faculty student research. which that's why we are able to go to collect stories out there, and faculty and students collaborate constantly. And we have a team, a panel of student panel tomorrow, where they will talk about their research that they did in Burundi, what they've learned. So really amazing. One of the students produced an exhibit, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's the Echoes of Silence. It's on the first, if you haven't been, it's on the first floor of the main library, Ronald. Yeah, oh, thank you. Ronald Williams Library. So, so that's the student faculty research. And the fourth one is the curriculum development. So we already have created a course from the center. It's run now in social work, which we are very grateful, a graduate course on introduction to genocide and human rights studies in Africa and diaspora. And we hope to continue creating more courses and eventually have a certificate in these studies, a graduate certificate. And then the fifth one is community outreach, which is spearheaded by our own Dr. Aisetu Ibrahima. And so that's what will help us reach out to communities, community-based organizations and so on. So to build the partnerships there. So the vision is big, but it's really all coming from membership from everybody. You all have given us ideas over time. So if we really nailed down, we came down to the 5 pillars, it's because we're listening to everyone who we've been working with over the years. And of course, the building blocks, the ones who have it in their heart, regularly coming together to talk. So we meet monthly and we keep checking and seeing which direction to take, but that's where we are now. We have these 5 pillars. Thank you.
When I think about GRAD and the work we do, I want going down in history as we look at genocide decreasing in the world, when we talk about the mechanisms that did that, starting with Janine's story, that GRAD will be listed. We talk about the organizations that's helped the reduction of this kind of mass murder of the world. So I see our name forever in lights around that issue.
And
So,
go ahead.
just a quick note. So this center is one of a kind, at least in the Midwest. We're the only center that is focused on, that has a very focused research on genocide and human rights in Africa and the diaspora. So really investing on it and making it bigger and stronger could also be part of that vision.
Yeah, actually, it's in the United States.
Oh.
We did that. Before we started, we had to do some research to see if there's anyone. So I'm a member of the consortium of higher education centers of Holocaust, genocide, and the human rights centers. And we have about now maybe 50 centers are members of the consortium, and I'm on the executive committee. We are the only one that focuses on Africa and the diaspora. So it is important.
And what better note to end this panel on, that we are doing work that is important, innovative, and it touches at the heart of what it means to be human. It's based on the principle of Ubuntu. I am because we are, and we've operated GRAD within the context of Ubuntu. People are only people through other people, and it's through our work that we humanize and dignify those who don't have a voice, who were silenced, who were genocided. The work we do is not just simply academic, it is humanitarian. Thank you very much. So we are keeping time. So let us give the panelists another round of applause as we move to the next session in 5 minutes. You're welcome to take a short break to my extreme left, after which we will reconvene for 10:30. Thank you.
Everybody.